although there are a lot of good things to say about hydropower, but it also does have some a negative impact on river ecosystems, in that it affects the salmon's passage of traveling upriver to spawn. So what you see here to mitigate this problem is they build this, what they call a fish ladder, that bypasses or circumvents the hydro dam to allow fish like the salmon to continue upriver to spawn. Okay, so this is a really interesting idea. And this is a diagram of how the fish ladders work. So the fish just swim up river through this maze, and it's like it becomes also a tourist attraction. Here you could actually see fish swimming up here through these glass windows underwater. There you go. There you can see some salmon fishing, moving up river. And in fact, you'd be surprised to learn that there are people actually count. They sit there and with a counter and count fish that goes up river. So they actually have a count of the number of fish that goes up river to spawn every year. Okay, here we had a discussion with a tribal leader who talked about the history of Native American use of land in the Columbia River Basin and their continued rights to fisheries and lands. So the Native Indians, they have very special rights in the river basin. Like, for example, the Native Indians don't need a permit to fish while everyone else does, okay, for example. And we ended the day at Professor Jeff's house, having refreshments, very hospitable of him. We visited the Oregon Zoo, and we were very fortunate that our visit coincided with World Rivers Day and also at the opening of a special exhibition. And here we are in the elephant enclosure. It's almost a $60 million facility that's built within the Oregon Zoo, and it's home to 5 elephants. And every Sabahan, when they are invited to Portland, they are brought to visit these elephants here, because one of the elephants is actually a Bornean pygmy elephant that arrived in 1999. It's still very healthy. This is not it, I believe. This is probably his Thailand friend. Okay, and you recognize that gentleman there. He's smiling, but he actually is terrified. And we were privileged to also get some behind-the-scenes tour of the zoo. And here's a tour of the endocrine laboratory, whatever that is. And that's the director, Don Moore. He's the director of the Oregon Zoo. So he hosted lunch, and here we are exchanging gifts. We also had an engagement with the Greenbelt Land Trust in Corvallis. Now, this is basically, this trust manages lands that are acquired for conservation. Here, the vice president of the trust, Professor John Bliss. Now, he's giving us a briefing, and the trust actually acquired some 3,500 acres of land around Corvallis that they managed for conservation with the local community. And John here taking us on a walk around one of the properties owned by the Greenbelt Land Trust. Okay, and this is the College of Forests in Corvallis. This is a college forest that's run by OSU, and in fact, it is managed for commercial production as well. Okay. Here, Professor Matt Betts from the OSU, who's talking about Douglas fir silviculture and biodiversity conservation in the managed forests of OSU. We also given a talk about forest recreation planning at the college forest. Okay, on the 1st of October, We were given a tour of the OSU campus. Now, OSU has an enrollment of about 23,000 students, and he has one of the top-ranked forestry programs in the world. Okay, here we are walking on the campus grounds with Michelle Justice as our guide. We also had a roundtable discussion about possible collaborations at the College of Forestry. Okay, and Professor John Bailey talked about the history of forest fires in Oregon and also of fire management. He even gave us a demonstration outside on forest fire behavior. Okay, industry-wise, we visited the Ferris Lumber Company. Now, this company specializes in producing mass plywood panels. And here are the two vice presidents. They were so honored to be posing next to me here. That's Kyle and Tyler. And here they are taking us on a tour of their mill. We also visited DR Johnson, which is another company that specializes in the manufacture of cross-laminated timber. Here is the part of the process of producing cross-laminated timber, and when it's finished, it looks like this, really nice-looking beams that's supposedly stronger than solid wood. Just for your information, Oregon grows about 24 million cubic meters of timber a year, and they use about 17 million cubic meters. So they do have actually excess timber, largely Douglas fir. Okay, so I guess don't expect to sell much timber to Oregon. Here we are at Mary's Peak Conservation Area, where the U.S. Forest Service representative, Terry O'Rourke, who gave us a briefing about the management of the conservation area. Now, Oregon is a coastal state, so we took a drive to Newport, which is a coastal town in Oregon, where we visited the Hatfield Marine Science Center that's run by OSU. Okay, that's a beautiful Oregon coast, and a lot of seals and sea lions that make a lot of noise, and it's a tourist attraction here at Newport, and it's protected by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department. Newport's also a fishing town. Okay, here we visited a wildlife safari in Roseburg, and that's a 600-acre zoo out maybe about 3 hours from Portland. And here we are giving a briefing about the safari, how it's managed, and we even got to meet an African elephant. Again, another terrified gentleman here who was forced to pose with the elephant. Okay, so we one morning, one very cold morning, we visited a site where they were doing bird banding and sampling of migratory birds by the Klamath Bird Observatory. Now, this is an NGO, a scientific NGO that specializes in surveying or monitoring migratory birds. They're doing this for the U.S. Forest Service, in fact. So they get about 70% of their funding from the U.S. Forest Service. So it's interesting that the U.S. Forest Service there, in fact, outsources some of the activities to such scientific NGOs. Okay, here's some, I believe some of them are maybe volunteers doing bird banding. In fact, you have to get a special permit to do bird banding in the U.S. Okay, and then we visited Crater Lake. It's one of the national park, and it's the deepest lake in the U.S., almost 600 meters deep, and that's the best looking model I could get. That's Crater Lake National Park. Then we proceeded to the Jedediah Smith Park in Northern California, where you have this famous coastal redwood. It's the tallest trees in the world, and the tallest individual is called Hyperion. It has a height of almost 116 meters, and its location of the tree is not disclosed just for security reasons. Here, it's very impressive trees. You can see just the sheer size of it. So how's that for size now? Here we are posing next to a stand of coastal redwoods. Okay, and we went to the visited the beautiful town of Ashland, where we had a briefing from the divisional chief forester of the Ashland Fire and Rescue Unit. Now, so the local government here has a fire and rescue unit that's also has a chief forester, and his job is mainly in fire management. So he's talking about how the community here tries to manage the area to control fire. Here's a cross-section of a tree. It's about 600 years old. That shows the fire history of this area. So you can see it goes back to 1388 here. It was a very early fire. So this tells you about the history of fire and that in that particular area in Ashland. Okay, here's Priscilla Franco. She talked about the Pacific Crest Trail. Now that's a trail that runs all the way from Mexico through the Pacific coast up to Canada. Okay, it's more than 2,000 miles, and she and her husband used to manage some sections of the Pacific Crest Trail. Again, very interesting to see the involvement again of NGOs and civil society in a lot of aspects of natural resource management. Okay, we visited the US Forest Service Forensics Lab in Ashland, and it is the only one of its kind in the US, and is located in Ashland. And here the deputy director is giving us a briefing, and you can see here on the table that's a dead eagle here, where this lady is doing an autopsy on a dead eagle. Okay, so the lab was established in 1979. It's a really high-tech lab, and this is the deputy director, Dr. Espinoza, who's showing off some of his fancy equipment. Okay, we visited another fish hatchery at the Salmon River. Here's Albert Teo, who's posing next to with a king salmon. I think locally it's called a chinook. And fishing in Oregon is highly regulated. So you can see here, these are all signs, postings about the regulations. Here again, they are regulated by size, by sex, by volume. Perhaps something that we should also consider in fisheries management in Sabah. Okay, so all good things have to come to an end. Here is we had a closing dinner at the Forestry Club cabin, hosted by OSU, and yeah, that was a very pleasant dinner. And here I am posing next to the Dean of the College of Forestry, Anthony Davis, and Michelle Justice on my right. Okay, I think I would like to end my talk with a slide. Well, this slide here. While we were walking in the redwoods, we met a lady, an old lady, really chatty old lady, and she hikes in the Jedediah Smith Park every day, and she had two pieces of advice for us, and I'd like to share it with you here. She says, keep going and never give up, and practice gratitude and always be thankful. So with that, I like to say thank you for listening in. I've taken up most of my time here, but I can probably continue again to speak at the question and answer session. Okay, I think I've already gone for more than 25 minutes. Do I have a little bit more time?
No, Dr. Yodi, end your presentation, right?
Well, I have a few more other things to say, but never mind. Yeah, I could just say, well, anyway, just some few parting words. I think regardless of what you may think of the current president of the US, I can tell you that the Oregonians are really super nice people. The spirit of volunteerism and philanthropy in the US is very high, something that we could learn from. I was very struck by the strong partnership between civil society and government. And I think this is something we see also going on in Sabah now, and it should be encouraged. Also, I think if you're traveling with a group of women, make sure that you plan frequent toilet stops, okay? Because men can do it everywhere, but the women, they somehow need to visit the toilet quite often. And allocate some time for shopping. That's really important, okay? Allocate some time for shopping, and I think also these such study tours that involve many agencies, multi-agencies study tours are really useful. It helps build relationships, camaraderie, and it helps us understand our different roles in society. I think that something should be encouraged. So those are my parting words. Thank you very much. So I have to stop sharing screen, right?
Yes, you have to stop.
Stop. Okay, you've done that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert. So to all the speakers and all the organizing committee, please open your video right now, because just noticed that our CCF just joined in or just logged in. Okay. Hello, Dato. Can you please unmute your mic, please, Dato?
Hello. Good morning.
Hello, Dato.
Bye.
How are you?
Fine. Not feeling very well. Staying at home.
Morning, Dato.
We'll proceed for the next speaker, okay,
Yeah.
Dato?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So, okay, I can see all the speakers already mute your mic. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Robert, once again. Our second speaker for this workshop is Ms. Lee Kahan, and UNDP project for biodiversity and ecosystem based in Sabah Forestry Department's headquarters under the Sustainability Unit. And now I kindly invite Kahan to deliver her talk entitled The Food System, Land Use and Restoration of Fowler Project. Please welcome the lovely Kahan.
Thank you, Viviani. Selamat pagi semua. Do you know that today is the World Food Day? No, I guess no. Well, in conjunction with this World Food Day, while you stay safe at home and enjoying your breakfast, I will present to you a new Malaysia country project under the Follow Impact Program, which is funded by the 7th funding cycle of Global Environment Facility, GEF. Many of you have heard of FOLLOR. In full, FOLLOR stands for Food Systems, Land Use, and Restoration. The FOLLOR Impact Program directly engages 27 countries over 8 commodities. The program aims to promote sustainable, integrated landscapes and efficient food value and supply chains at scale. The Malaysia Country Project is well positioned in the Follow Impact Program for the palm oil supply chain alongside Indonesia as the 2 largest global palm oil producers. There is also substantial potential for replication and influence with the participation of Papua New Guinea and several other countries. The Follow Global platform has to work with the country projects. At the same time, the country projects have to meaningfully interact with the regional and global activities. Key success in country projects are right crops on the right landscapes and the right activities. Local action is not enough. It needs to aggregate and scale. So at the global platform, it will strengthen value chain partnerships, support policy and advocacy, and provide strategic knowledge management and communications. The idea of the project started way back in November 2017 when a Memorandum of Understanding on Transboundary Elephant and Orangutan project was signed between the Sabah Forestry Department, the Sabah Wildlife Department, and WWF Malaysia. There were discussions on the need to manage the transboundary landscape in southern Sabah and northeastern Sarawak as part of the Heart of Borneo Corridor implementation project, as well as building on previous UNDP GEF multiple use forest landscapes project. It was agreed to seek funding from GEF under its Follow Impact program, and UNDP is selected as the GEF's implementing agency for the project in Malaysia. Since January 2019, we have gone through a series of application process from submission and approval of the expression of interest, then the concept paper, and currently we are at the near end of the project preparation grant PPG phase, whereby a full project document is to be developed and submitted to GEF Secretariat for endorsement. The Sabah government has confirmed participating in the project following a letter of commitment signed by the former Chief Minister of Sabah, as well as an indicative co-financing commitment of 170 million ringgit Malaysia for 6 years. The Sabah Forestry Department has done a great job, together with full support from the Natural Resources Office in obtaining approval from the top. The Sabah Forestry Department has also taken a proactive role on a period of socialization, building on lessons learned from previous Sabah multiple-use forest landscapes project that may help to reduce delays at an early stage of project implementation. The title of Malaysia Country Project is Integrated Landscape Management of Heart of Borneo Landscapes in Sabah and Sarawak. It is expected to start mid next year over 6 years. The project will be financed through a GEF grant of $7.368 million and an indicative of $90 million in co-financing. The co-financing are expected from recipient government, UNDP, civil society organizations, and private sectors. In GEF's policy on co-financing, it is financing that is additional to the GEF financing and that supports the implementation of the project and the achievement of its objectives. It is not new hard cash to be allocated for the project, but mobilized from development expenditure and operating expenditure. The project landscapes will involve Sabah and Sarawak, with Sabah landscape covering 4 administrative districts of Keningau, Tenom, Nabawan, and Sipitang. At the highest level of the project management is the project board, which will be chaired by the Secretary General of Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, KEPKAS. The project board will consist of development partners and beneficiary representatives, such as Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry, MAFI, Malaysian Palm Oil Board, MPOB, and Ministry of Rural Development, KPLB. At the state level, the state steering committees will be intermediary bodies between the project board and the responsible parties, facilitating management, and corrective action to ensure achievement of project results at the state level. For Sabah State Steering Committee, it will be chaired by the Secretary of Natural Resources, while Sabah Forestry Department is the responsible party for Sabah, including the project planning, coordination, management, monitoring, evaluation and reporting, procurement, as well as the financial management of the project at state level. To be housed under the responsible parties are the project management units, which consist of state coordinators, project assistant, and finance officers. To support the project management units, there will be full-time technical support positions, as well as short-term technical support, and also several district-level community mobilizers to facilitate implementation of the project activities in the project landscapes. The Malaysia Follow project aims to transform land use planning and management in Sabah and Sarawak to contain the footprint of palm oil production while maintaining high-value forests for environment and development benefits. 4 project components will contribute towards the follower programmatic outcomes. They are development of integrated landscapes management system, promotion of responsible value chains for palm oil and smallholder support, conservation and restoration, rehabilitation of natural habitats through public-private community partnerships, and knowledge management and impact monitoring. This slide illustrates the expected inputs and outputs from the project interventions. At the end of the project, it is expected that multi-stakeholder platforms institutionalize, national and state-level policies harmonize and scale up, enable for integrated landscape management in Sabah and Sarawak, value chains for sustainable palm oil strengthened, smallholder support systems are strengthened for participation in sustainable farming and commodity supply chains, high-value forests protected, restored, rehabilitated, and connected across the heart of Borneo in Sabah and Sarawak. Also equally important is the project results are tracked and impact of interventions evaluated with learning captured and shared across Malaysia and follow program. There will be local champions, sustainability champions, and potential postgraduates produced at the end of the project. The project intervention targets will contribute to the GEF's core indicators under 3 focal areas of land degradation, biodiversity, and climate change. Through the 27 country projects of Follower Impact Program, Malaysia project will contribute to at least 115,000 hectares or 5% area of degraded agricultural land and forest restored, at least 4% area of landscapes under improved management to benefit biodiversity, at least 24% greenhouse gas emissions avoided in agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector, at least 56,000 individual people, of whom half of them are female, directly benefit from the project. The Malaysia Follower project interventions will also contribute towards 7 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 9 out of 20 IG biodiversity targets. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what the project is about. 3 points that I would like to highlight as my wrap up. First, the project is meant to benefit local communities, including women and customary peoples and the smallholders at the districts, where they are included in the planning and management process, be empowered, and their livelihood improved. Secondly, valuable high conservation value, HCV, and high carbon stock HCS forest areas in the heart of Borneo can be connected, that also provide wildlife corridors and enhancing ecosystem services. And third, the project is designed to support national and state agendas, including the 12 Malaysia Plan, Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil MSPO certification scheme, and Heart of Borneo initiative. For Sabah, the project will help fulfill Sabah's target of at least 30% totally protected areas and the state's jurisdictional approach to certification. We all have a role to play, and your supports can make an impact. With that, terima kasih Kotoh Wadan.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kahan. So just want to share with everyone, apart from World Food Day, it's also a global hand washing day. So happy global hand washing day to everyone. So do remember to wash your hands regularly and stay vigilant at all times. Okay, please wash your hands during this pandemic season. Okay, all right. Let's use our next speaker, Ms. Nur Shafika Shamsul Kamal. Shafika is an Best Center Sepilok. Her presentation title is Freshwater Fish Diversity in Selected Forest Reserve in Sabah and Research Importance to... Sorry, hopefully everyone can hear me well. And its research importance to forestry. Over to you, Ika.
Thank you, Viviani. So I'll be sharing my slides. Okay. So, Assalamualaikum and good morning to everyone. Today I will share my findings on freshwater fish diversity in selected forest reserves in Sabah, and I would like to take this opportunity to talk about its importance in relation to forestry. Before I start, I would like to give a brief background about this research. Our research on freshwater fish is newly established since 2017, and the objectives are to study the freshwater fish and to support in forest management and conservation plan of freshwater fish diversity. Besides that, we are also aiming to establish a repository center of freshwater fish in FRC, and now we have some 80 species with 250 individuals voucher deposited. Up to now, we have explored 17 reserves, more than 30 rivers and streams. And according to ENG in Sabah, there are 166 species of freshwater fish, and eventually the number keeps increasing as more species are being described, including this one. Despite of COVID, we have described a new species of betta, which is a betta nuluhon, a type of fighting fish. So here is the betta nuluhon, which was found in Crocker Range area. So my talk this morning is divided into two parts. First, I'll be sharing my findings on freshwater fish diversity from our last two expeditions, which were held early of this year. The reserves namely Sapagaya, and Menyilan. And then I'll talk about why is forestry doing this research. So the purpose of these surveys were to first to document the freshwater fish fauna, second is to evaluate the diversity, and last to provide recommendations for conservation from the freshwater fish perspectives. So moving on to the introduction, the survey site, VJR Sapagaya and Class 1 Sapagaya extensions both are located adjacently, about 22 km west of Lahad Datu district. So the water conditions is clear, flowing smoothly, gravel bottom, rock and riffle, and as you can see here, a picture of pool. In fact, there's a few pools with 3 to 6 meters width. There's also dead branches, bottom sand and rocks. And for Mengilan Forest Reserves, it's a class 1 forest reserve, which is gazetted in 2002 and surrounded by Sapulut Forest Reserve, which is class 2. The water condition is brownish, turbid, muddy banks, bottom sand and gravel, rock and riffle, and the shore vegetation is secondary dipterocarp forest. So this survey was carried out 4 to 6 days of expedition. The survey sites were chosen based on this following condition, which is easy accessible along the tributaries. The traditional gears were used, which are gill nets, fish traps, gill nets, fish traps, cast nets, push nets, and anglers. The techniques were used based on the physical characteristics of sites. Then the fishes were fixed in 10% of formalin for 1 week and preserved in 75% ethanol for long-term storage. These are some of our collections in FRC. Now, moving on to the next slide, the results and discussion. In Sapagaya and Sapagaya, the forest reserves, we caught 18 species with 376 individuals. 8 of them are endemic to Borneo, and Nematobramis is the most abundant species. So this is Nematobramis. In Mengilan, 4 species were caught with 43 individuals. 2 of them are endemic, and Barbodis CLA is the most abundant species. For your information, both of these are endemic to Borneo. So in terms of diversity, Sapagaya and Sapagaya have the higher number of diversity. The number shows the existence of a balance between total species and total individual of every species. All recorded species were native and mostly resident to clean and clear headwater stream ecosystem. Active logging occurring outside Mengilan could be one of the reasons of small number of species caught. As I mentioned earlier, Mengilan is surrounded by class 2 forest reserves or commercial reserve, which is Sapulut, and any term of logging or land use change had a clear and negative impact on fish communities. Species such as the Nematobramis often be seen in surface area, Warosbora were easily seen in this layer. Actually, Crossocylus and Crossocylus were always seen above, just above the bottom. This one should be up here. While Nematobramis known to burrow into streams bottom, habitually fish like anguilla are the bottom dwellers, and the circle group fish is actually Cyprinidae, and they're the most dominant family is family that includes carps, minnows, and barbs. So here's the checklist of fishes from all 3 reserves. Sapagaya and Sapagaya recorded 6 families, while Mengilan recorded 4 families. So in conclusions, the stream fishes are vulnerable to habitat degradation and facing potential depletion if their habitats are destroyed or the water quality reduced. Ambient habitat parameters such as dissolved oxygen, water depth, current clarity, temperature are important in structuring species assemblages. Longer sampling period are recommended, and covering wider areas are essential to get more information between fish community and the forest. The finding of this survey are beneficial for conservation and restoration purpose. Now we are moving to the second part, which is the importance of freshwater fish in relation to forestry. As we all know, freshwater fish provide food, offering a significant source of protein and micronutrients livelihood and income to tropical dwellers and rural communities, which is indirectly contribute to the economy. And and forests have a central function in maintaining the diversity of freshwater fish, where the riparian alongside streams and rivers are important supply of woody debris and leaf litter, creating a range of habitat for fish, also as nursing grounds and refuges to hide away from predators. So they are both inextricably linked to each other. However, in 2003, the Department of Fisheries Sabah said that inland fishes are declining, and the most recent study by Law et al., freshwater fish had the highest extinction. So in order to protect the freshwater ecosystem, the habitats of the fishes needs to be protected. And according to Wilkinson, any form of logging or land use change had negative impact on fish communities. So like looking after the riparian zone, the narrow strips of trees and vegetations on banks of watercourse. And then most studies now found that fish diversity was higher where there was more forest cover and could support wider range of species. Unfortunately, in Malaysia, the freshwater fish conservation and taxonomy management is still considered in discovery and exploratory stage, according to Ng. Because this is not an active field, as it's considered as only fundamental research with no economic returns. So we are lacking of expertise. Another thing is in Sabah, one of the reasons of lack of inventory study is due to difficulty of access to the remote headwater regions. So hence in FRC, we started off this diversity research and gather as much information to create a baseline on fish assemblages in all river system in Sabah, so that this is not only can help in forest management, but also the conservation prioritization plans for tropical systems can be developed, and then to contribute this to local livelihood and food security. So before I end this talk, I would like to share a quote from Veron. To truly conserve these ecosystems, we must shift our perception of freshwater environments to see freshwater not as just a physical resource, but as natural and biodiverse environment. So let's just be honest, fishes actually are not charismatic in the traditional sense of cute and cuddly. Snapping picture can be problematic because they're definitely not photogenic, and yeah, so it doesn't help that when people think of fish, they think of food. All this very hard to raise people attention for freshwater fish conservation. So yeah, that's why we do it. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, our Miss Betanulhon Ika. All right. So to all the participants, if you have any questions during the presentation, just write them to chat section or Q&A section, as you can see from your laptop or from your PC. The speaker will answer the questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentations. Thank you for your attention. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker is Miss Sandy Sen. Sandy is a research officer based in Forest Research Centre, Sepilok. Her presentation title is Conservation Status and Distribution of Sabah Endemic Trees. The floor is yours, Sandy. Please welcome my baby sister, Sandy.
Okay, thank you, Miss Viviani. Okay, hi, good morning. My name is Sandy Sen, and I am attached here in FRC. I'm the systematic botany section. So today I am going to talk about one of the projects that I am involved in, that is the Sabah Plant Red List. So this project is actually a collaboration between Sabah Forestry Department, UMS, BGCI, and also Sabah Parks. but most of the work is done by Forestry Department and UMS, BGCI as the reviewer, and Sabah Park as data contributor. So in today's presentation, I will focus on the progress work done on the conservation status of Sabah endemic trees and a little bit on the utilizations of species distribution data. Why it is important to have this initiative and start the process of red listing Sabah plants. So because there is a need to fulfill this common goal, which is to prevent extinction of species globally, nationally, and also at the state level. So in terms of plants, there are about 300,000 vascular plants that has been described and recorded in the world. So about 10,000 of those are actually distributed throughout Borneo Island. So when it comes to taking action in tackling and prevention of the extinction, species extinction, we first need to find out which species is most threatened. So to know this, we would have to perform an assessment of a species conservation status, and from there onwards, formulate necessary conservation action to improve the status and hopefully to prevent its extinction. So for such assessment, we have applied IUCN red list categories and criteria. So considering that there is a lot of plants, we have decided to first focus on endemic species. According to our checklist for Borneo, we have at least 6,000 taxa that are endemic to Borneo. And out of this number, 1/6, that is about 1,000 vascular plant species is known to be endemic to our state, Sabah. So to break the number into a more manageable list for assessment and targeting the output, we have decided to focus on the Sabah endemic trees, which is about close to 300 species. This is the outline of the process. It looks quite simple, starting with data compilation, georeferencing, and then to the assessment. So let me go through each step briefly. So at any start or the start of any assessment, we would first need to obtain the plant distribution data. So the sources of this data will be taken from herbarium, from our very own Sandakan herbarium, directly from the specimens or the BRAM software where all the collections are stored digitally. And we also visited Kinabalu Park Herbarium for data compilation. So, and we also referred or look into published literature such as Tree Flora, Sabah and Sarawak, and other newer article published. This is to ensure that we have the most updated information on the species that we are working on. And we also refer to GBIF, where it stands for Global Biodiversity Information Facility. This is actually an online open source extension for database which contains collection from other herbaria or university in which we may not have the collection in our herbarium. So the data available in GBIF is not only for plants, but it is also available for wildlife and marine life. So for updated distribution data, we heavily rely on expedition such as Heart of Borneo, EIS surveys, and targeted species survey as well. So after compiling records of the species, the next step is georeferencing. So georeferencing in the context of this work is actually assigning coordinate to descriptive locality or location. So to explain this in a more easy analogy is when like your friend suggested a new place for you to eat or to chill, but doesn't provide you the direction or the exact location. So your friend only provide you the name of the restaurant and the town. So what we usually do is we type everything to Google, type in the name of the restaurant and also the town, and then Google will pinpoint the coordinate of the restaurant for you and provide the directions, given that the information already registered into Google. So it is actually the same with georeferencing. When in years before GPS was greatly utilized in research, the location of the specimen was written descriptively. So some of the specimen have specific details and location on where it was collected. So these are the examples of those that might be easier to georeferencing. But then there are some specimen or collection that have very little information, or they are using the old names, like the one that I showed in this slide, where the locality was written as Den Province. So Den Province is actually where, when Sabah used to be divided into different provinces during the colonial, the British time. So Den Province is, according to this map, is actually where Tambunan or Keningau is now located. So further tracing, we were able to georeference or give a coordinate point to this particular collection to Tambunan area. So it can be very time consuming to track down these places. But then we wanted to be as accurate as possible because it would greatly affect the distributions, each point, and subsequently affect the species status when it comes to assessment later, which is in this step. With all the records of species georeference, we are able to map up the species distribution based on the information in hand. So to assess the species status, we actually use these tools called GeoCat, which were developed to facilitate assessment. Where these tools, it is an online browser. So when you load up your data into GeoCat, it will help you to estimate the range of the species distributions, or the term that we use is extent of occurrence, EOO, and area of occupancy, AOO. So this is then followed by a process known as reduction analysis, in which a location point where a specimen previously collected will be removed if the area has underwent massive landscape changes. So for example, when you are working with a collection from the 30s, when they collected that particular specimen is still forested, but now it is already converted into other land use such as plantation, agricultural land, or even human settlement area. So this process actually provide an overview on how the distribution of the species has been affected by these changes. So after removing the necessary point, the GeoCat will then actually recalculate the percentage, the current area, and also the changes in percentage. So with this information, conservation status or stat category can be assigned. But then we will also need to have an in-depth understanding of the species habit, ecology, its habitat preference, and so on, because it will be essential to ensure the suitable or correct assignment of conservation status. So to date, out of the 299 endemic trees, 97 has already been published to the IUCN website as of 2019 or last year, which was shown in green bar, and the gray bar signify the other 100 species which are currently in line for publication. So it will be available either the end of this year or early next year in the RETIS website. So the remaining 100 over species, which are not shown in this graph, are either in the ongoing process of filling in the species information system form, or in the process of being georeferenced and later on assessed, and other groups that was assigned to other working group. As you can see from this graph, more than 50% of the 197 species falls under the threatened categories, so CR, endangered, and VU. So particularly in VU, because of VU or vulnerable, because these are the species that are confined to a very small area in Sabah. So the 197 species of endemic that was assessed is actually consists of new assessment, which means there are no record previously in the red list, and also updated assessment as such example. So in this slide are some example in which assessment are updated by the team. On the right side of the screen is Shorea waltonii. It is a Sabah endemic dipterocarp in which it was previously assessed in 1998 as critically endangered. But then with the new collection records and the updated assessment or reassessment from our team, it was downgraded to near threatened in last year's publication. So it is no longer listed in the threatened category. The one that on the left side, Parinari, the recent assessment actually has upgraded this species threat categories from vulnerable to critically endangered. So it is a shift from lower category, threatened categories to the highest. Then to show you the changes that this initiative brings in a bigger scale, this is an example of changes in assessment that was conducted on Bornean dipterocarps in percentage. So the assessment was conducted last year based on a joint effort of researchers from various states and countries in conjunction with the Flora Malaysiana in Brunei last year, especially with representative from each part of Borneo. So Sabah, Sarawak, and Kalimantan all is on the assessment. So highlighted in green, which is 40% of the total Bornean dipterocarp was actually downgraded from its previous status. And 27 species from the 40% has actually been downgraded from threatened to a non-threatened categories. So to give you a very example of a very drastic change is Paraschorea melanonon urat mata, which was assessed also as critically endangered in 1998, but then the reassessment has downgraded the species to least concern. So it is a very big jump of categories. So the project actually is not just solely for the protection and conservation action for the highly threatened species alone, but also in the process allow us to understand the flora distribution better at a landscape level. So this is especially essential in the identification of areas that may contain highly threatened plant species and what are the steps to be undertaken to protect those areas, thus enhancing our conservation plan, rendering it to be more focused and targeted. So to conclude my presentation, I would say that this initiative has brought much changes to the rare, threatened, and endemic plant list. With the local expert involvement, the plant assessment have provided much knowledge that is used to enhance the current forest management plan through the provisionings of to the important species list in surveys such as Heart of Borneo and other expeditions. So aside from that, in the information generated, other than the assessment, in terms of distribution map, has been greatly utilized in the statewide HCV assessment project. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandy, for your presentations. So I can see a lot of questions coming in to all the panelists, and even some of the questions are posted in our chat section. So to all the participants, feel free to scroll and read the questions. So that means you are really paying attention from home. Okay, I really appreciate that you are totally sit still and watch the webinar till the end. Okay, so we are now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. So to all the speakers, please open your video, please open your webcam. Okay, let us start our first question. Okay, first question. Let us start with our Tom Cruise. Okay, Dr. Robert, are you ready? Okay,
yeah, sort of.
Okay, this question is dedicated to you by Mr. Abraham Moore. What is some of the major forestry lessons learned from Oregon that we can implement in Sabah? And what are some things you have done differently or professionally, technically since the study trip?
Okay, I think both Abraham and Jonte had more or less similar questions.
Yeah.
One that stands out in my mind is again on freshwater fisheries management. I think I showed a lot of slides about fisheries management in Oregon, and also you can see how fishing is heavily regulated in the US. It has a long history of fisheries management, and I see that's something that's really lacking in Sabah. Even the fact that we are releasing exotic fish in our natural river systems is also something of concern. We need more enforcement in regulating fishing. Otherwise, you may find fish populations going extinct. So I think that's something we should be paying more attention towards, regulating fishing. We also have a lot more potential to grow in terms of forest recreation. I see that's something big in the US and something we can still improve on in Sabah. Okay, so there's a lot of potential to grow there. And also, one thing that I got from the trip is also that it reaffirms the importance of protecting wildlife in Sabah, because that's what set us apart from a place like Oregon, where, you know, they pretty much have everything in the bag. You know, they're quite well managed. I'm sure they have their own issues, but generally natural resources are well managed. But what they really don't have is actually our wildlife and our diversity. You know, they got clean rivers, they've got beautiful forests, they've got good shopping too, but they don't have our wildlife. Okay, and that's what people come to see. So that's very important. That's an important resource, and so it reaffirms the importance of setting aside sufficient protected forests, okay, in Sabah, to make sure that our wildlife diversity is protected. So I think that's a question about land use, about our protected area system. So I think we need to lock in that protected areas. So those are some of the key things that I learned from our trip. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If you have anything specific, just yeah, just ask. Okay. There's a question also by Roshan about a platform for to access land cover information for Sabah. Yeah. I think we are quite Forestry Department is quite readily shares information on request, but we don't put it online at the moment, also because we have issues with accuracy of the information, boundaries and all. But I think in the future we will make it more and more available online. We are in the process of updating our conservation area information systems, and we're going to make that available again. So I'm sure in the future we will have such land cover maps available online, and even produce a report periodically to talk about land cover changes in Sabah. But at the moment, I guess there's no online platform for making that easily accessible. But something we are working on, something we are trying to go digital in a lot of things now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Robert. All right, thank you, Dr. Robert. So hopefully, Dr. Jonte, your questions already being answered by Dr. Robert just now. So moving on to the next question, based on Q&A sections, you can take a look on it. Okay, from Dr. Bahaman to Shafika, any record of Empurau in Sabah? Empurau are members of the Totembrioides species found throughout the southeast. So, Ika, do you have comment on this?
Yeah, in fact, we caught a lot of tor somewhere, everywhere in Sabah, but it's only strict to water, clear water and clean water, since they are very they are very restrictful to that kind of environment and habitat. Yeah, we do cut. What's the question again?
Can you open your
Yeah,
Q&A?
Yeah, we do record Empurau in Sabah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ika. So another question to you from Mr. Abraham. What are the different forest types of the site? Are you seeing any relationship of forest types and fish population?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Abraham. Both are secondary diplocarp forest. At the moment, I am only collecting data on the diversity, but I do plan to seek for the relationship of forest and fish populations. And I believe we can achieve that since we are now collaborate with NIOSH and Forever Sabah. So far, I have no plan for that. But thanks, I will be looking more info about the climate change on fish populations.
Okay, so another question from you from the same person. Any plans for longitudinal study to see effects over time? On fish populations?
I've answered that. So far, I have no plan, but yeah, I will be looking more info about that. Thank you.
I see. Okay, I think everyone is loving your presentation just now. Another question from Mr. Rahim Masad to you again, Ika. Okay, the presentation by Ika clearly shows the need to have clean rivers to ensure that we do have good supply of fishes in our rivers. However, heavy siltation is obvious in most rivers. Thus, what are the steps to be taken to ensure there will be adequate river reserve, no clearing protected? Do you have any comments on this?
Indeed, forestry activities can be associated with source pollution. So best forest management practice are needed to minimize the risk, like could be restoration, looking after the riparian zone, or maybe avoid harvesting during weather condition that could increase of soil movement. So yeah, that's, I think, could be the best way.
Okay, thank you, Ika. So you can take your rest for a moment. So this question dedicated to our baby sister, okay, Sandy. For Sandy, anything from the project that surprised you in terms of botanical or ecological knowledge? It's from Mr. Abraham.
Hi, I actually already answered that question in the chat, in the question and answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Sandy. So, okay, the next question is from Sing Yun Chin. Sandy, do you have planned distribution list for Pitas and Beluran district of Sabah, especially in areas that are undergoing degazettement? Okay, already answered. Great.
Yeah.
So, Sing, Sandy will take a look at her data. All right. So let's move on to the another questions. It's from Dr. Fifi Hanisda. What do you think about the recent trend of empty forest syndrome? It seems that this pandemic COVID-19 had triggered the activity of harvesting plants in the forest illegally and sell them to the so-called urban planters. Even though the plants might not be listed yet as endangered, but just imagine if the harvesting activity keep on going on without control, sooner or later it will be listed as endangered. Do you have any strategies for this? So this question is dedicated to Sandy, is it?
Perhaps maybe Dr. Robert Ong or Indra can answer this one, because this is more on encroachment. Thank you.
On Indra or Dr. Robert? Maybe you can answer this question from Dr. Fifi, UMS. The recent trend of empty forest syndrome.
Come again.
Okay.
About the question just now.
Okay, to all the speakers, you can open the Q&A section part and you can look at the questions. And I will repeat again. What do you think about the recent trend of empty forest syndrome? It seems that this pandemic COVID-19 had triggered the activity of harvesting plants in the forest illegally and sell them to the so-called urban planters. Even though the plants might not be listed yet as endangered, but just imagine if the harvesting activity keep on going on without control, sooner or later it will be listed as endangered. Do you have any strategies for this? So any one of you want to start?
Yeah, maybe I would start first, Dr. Robert. Yeah, to answer, just to respond to Dr. Fifi just now. Recently, we received a so-called online complaint about the collection of the wild, what do you call, wild keladi, yam, if I'm not mistaken, at Kota Belud. But unfortunately, we need to, what do you call, because we have a different type of land use, forest reserve strictly under us. But if it's from Sabah Parks or even from title area, then it's a different story. But as for now, I think we haven't had any, what do you call, proper strategy on control, like non-listed what do you call, species under IUCN. But yeah, we will look into it in the future. Possibly, Dr. Robert, you can add some info as well. Thank you.
Well, I think that's all boils down to enforcement again. And the way I look at the empty forest syndrome is really refers to the presence of wildlife in forests. And in Sabah, it's not such a big problem yet, maybe in some places, but we are still quite rich in wildlife. And again, like I mentioned, it's just a matter of better enforcement and having more protected areas. And hopefully we can address that problem, that it doesn't descend into such a what they call an empty forest. Okay, but I'm quite optimistic in Sabah that that's something that's under control.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Robert. So another question from UMS lecturer, Dr. Jaya. I have two questions. How do you closely monitor the freshwater species data for commercialization purpose so far? Okay, this question dedicated to Ika. So please unmute your mic.
So far, I haven't gone through that part yet, and I am not sure if SFD have planned for spawn development or potential species. That's entirely up to our boss, I guess, for the second question. No, at the moment, we don't have any plan for that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ika. Maybe Dr. Robert, do you want to add some comments on that? From Dr. Jaya, do SFD emphasize spawn development on potential species for national or global market?
No, I have no comments. I'm not exactly an expert in that kind of stuff. So, okay. Nope, sorry.
All right, it's okay. So since you already unmute your mic, Dr. Robert, so Mr. Abraham again, seems like he really likes you. Anything that Sabah Forestry does better than Oregon?
That's a good question, huh? Well, I see they do a lot of things better than us, so that's why I'm thinking. When you benchmark against Oregon, again, I go back to our wildlife again. That's something that's where we have that they cannot have. Okay, you can get oil palm in every country. That's the same, you know, oil palm in Indonesia, oil palm in Africa, in South America, they're all the same. You can have malls, you can have you know, but they're all the same everywhere in the world. But our wildlife is unique to Sabah, so that's again something that yeah, we need to protect. And I don't really want to say that we're better at they even drink beer better than us. So in case there's some Oregonians here who are online here, no, I can't say that we are better than the natural resource management than the people in Oregon. I refrain to answer that question.
Okay. You have another fence from Mr. Genius, Dr. Robert. Learning from the Oregon approach, what are the suggestions to the state government to improve tourism?
I think the department is also it's a lot more receptive to, and we receive a lot of proposals to develop ecotourism recreation in forest reserves. So we are open to such ideas, and we will see more and more of that in the future. So that's a strategy of the forestry department, is allow more recreational use and regulated use of forests for purposes other than timber extraction.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Robert. So question to Ika. In your opinion, how the river Tagal system could influence the fish conservation in Sabah, especially in the East Coast region, where there is no established river Tagal system yet? What's your comment on this?
I think the system I think the systems maintains harmony between users and natural environment. It shows that we concern the local community to support the freshwater fish conservation, and and it is not only for conservation purpose, but it can help the local people to generate income for them, and but it should be in a sustainable manner. So I think it can be implemented into the East Coast, since we have seen in the West Coast the Tagal is quite successful. So it should be implemented in the East Coast too. That's all.
All right, thank you, Ika. So maybe some of the questions cannot be answered live right now due to time constraint. So maybe all the speakers can respond to you privately. Okay, so I will finish with two more questions, and this question dedicated to Kahan, okay, from Dr. John Te. What is the reason to locate polar in the present location?
The reason why the 4 administratives were selected at the first place was because the West Coast are the last frontier landscapes for development in Sabah. So we think that this project can actually put interventions in that area towards responsible farming, and hopefully to promote the responsible value chains while maintaining the conservation and restoration efforts in Sabah. I hope that answered.
All right, thanks, Kahan. So last question for today to Miss Sandy by Dr. John Te. Any intention to classify forest reserve by rare and endangered rating? Do you have comment on this?
Thank you for the question. So the question was, any intention to classify forest reserve by rare and endangered strategy? So to classify, I don't know how to answer this, but then the data that we provided or with the list of rare, threatened, and endangered, and also all the map, it will actually assist or give an input to where are the area to be focused on conservation. So I don't know if I can or there is any intention to classify forest reserve by rare and threatened strategy. I think that will be best answered by those that are directly involved in the management. Yeah.
Okay, additions from you guys? No more, right? Okay. All right. So the last questions marks the end of the Q&A session for today. Okay, so we already end the Q&A session, and now I kindly invite Dato' Masyur Muhammad Jaini, our Chief Conservator of Forest Sabah, to deliver a few words. So maybe Dato' Masyur, you can open your webcam so that everyone can see you, and you can wave to everyone. Seems like Dr. Robert is missing you.
Chandra Hati.
Tidak sponsor, bos. Hello, Dato. Can you see us?
Hello.
Web?
Hello. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Vivian.
Okay, Dato.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, dear friend and colleague. I am pleased for your participation in this today third SFD webinar, which actually aims as a learning forum during the COVID-19 pandemic and part of the program and activity of work from home for us. With the escalating of the COVID-19 pandemic, in-person events are being cancelled or postponed to limit the spread of COVID virus. Virtual online tools such as today webinar is now become a popular platform for communication and continuing the learning and exchange knowledge with a low cost, low risk, and able to reach out a bigger audience. Besides sharing and exchange knowledge on various disciplines of forest and forestry among SFD officers and staff across Sabah, equally important that this webinar is also a medium for SFD reaching out to many old and new friends, forester, researcher, lecturer, student, and civil society representative. It is also become a platform for us on perception management, whereby SFD is not just about managing logging and timber. We also involved in a wide range of activity and program such as multi-stakeholder and multilateral cooperation on conservation, community engagement, restoration, protection, research, expedition, just to name a few. For today's webinar, there were 4 presenters, namely my learned friend, Dr. Robert Ong, Deputy Conservator of Forest Research and Development, sharing his lesson learned from Oregon USA study trip, and the other 3 officers from SQ and FRC Spilo have presented their respective topic on polar multilateral multi-stakeholder multilateral cooperation project polar, on research on freshwater fish, and also on the endemic trees. I was informed that nearly 200 participants have registered into the webinar. To all participants, a warm welcome to you all. I believe that by participating in this webinar, we are in the right place and the right time. Together, let us accelerate the exchange of ideas and scaling up of good practice in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And on behalf of SFD, I would like to thank you for your interest and support to the success of this event. Hopefully you will gain and find new knowledge and can contribute valuable ideas. Your input and comment are welcome and appreciated. Lastly, I would like to convey my sincere thanks and appreciation to all members that have involved in organizing this webinar. Thank you. See you in the next webinar. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Okay, all right. So thank you to all the presenters, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. For your information, right, there are 10 organizations that joined today's webinar. They are from University Malaysia Sabah, Oregon State University College of Forestry, Oregon State University College of Forestry, SFD itself, Borneo Eco Tours, TRCRC, Green Empowerment, Wilmar, APE Malaysia, SABC, and WWF. Thank you for your continuous support. So if you have any other question, please contact, or you can drop us email at sfdseminar@gmail.com. So before you leave, we will launch a poll on the webinar, and we would appreciate if you complete that and provide your feedback. Okay, so I will launch the poll. 1 second. Okay, all right. So already enabled attendees viewing the questions. So first, are you more productive when working from home? So please be true to yourself, yes or no. Okay, I can't wait for this result. So second is, do you multitask when attending a meeting online? Yes, I'm feeling guilty. And second is, my mind tends to wander. But I think no, because the Q&A session just now is very active. So third is no, I'm 100% focused. Okay, it's a great spirit. So sometimes, okay. All right, third question, any improvements that can be made to the webinar? Okay, yes. If yes, just drop us an email at sfdseminar2020@gmail.com. No complaint, excellent team. Okay. So I can see that most of you tend to be more productive when working at home. Okay, do you multitask when attending a meeting online? Sometimes 53%. And 90% of you have voted that no complaints towards this webinar. Thank you very much. Okay, you guys still can drop your vote. So on behalf of Sabah Forestry Department's webinar organizing committee and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Stay clean, stay safe, and please stay at home, everyone. Please stay tuned to our next webinar. Thank you very much.